Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar on SRA Price, Transparency Rules and Other Regulations. Now, of course, you'll be aware that we did have a price transparency webinar a couple of weeks ago where we did run through the rules. However, we noticed that there's been a lot of publicity about a couple of particular areas in relation to the price transparency rules, and other equally important areas really haven't had the attention it deserves. So we felt we really needed to highlight that, and we thought that this would be a really good opportunity to also cover other regulations pertaining to websites. And I think it's true to say that it's very rare to find a legal website that complies with all regulations. So let's run through all of the different things you have to think about when owning a law firm website. So we're going to be covering over the course of around 15 minutes, if not a little less, about what you mustn't put on your website, when it's mandatory to have a secure website. We're going to be covering Law Society records, Outcome 8.5 of the SRA Code of Conduct, Companies House requirements, the rules in relation to EU online dispute resolution, privacy policy, pricing transparency, and the new complaints information requirements relating to websites. So I'm going to hand over to Emma now. My colleague Emma Rushton is going to be co-presenting this webinar, and she's going to kick off by covering and talking about things not to have on your website.
Okay, so often when we look at firms' websites, there are a number of logos displayed which are not permitted. For example, we often see the Criminal Defence Service logo and the Community Legal Service logo. Now, these logos were abolished in 2013, so you're no longer permitted to use these on your website. A couple of other logos that are also often displayed are the Law Society's logo and the SRA logo. You're not permitted to use these on your website unless you have express permission from these organisations to do so. And we have never been aware of a circumstance where they have permitted firms to use these. You're also unable to use the Queen's coat of arms unless you actually provide legal services to the Queen. However, you are permitted to have the new digital badge, which you are able to download. You will need to ensure that you have the correct website address on the Law Society records to be able to download the new digital badge. Other logos which you are permitted to display are those for the relevant accreditation schemes. For example, the Lexcel accreditation logo, CQS, and Resolution logos. A quick note on the Lexcel logo, you'll need to ensure that you are using the most up-to-date Lexcel logo. Once you passed your recent audit, you should be able to download the Lexcel logo from the accreditation website. I'm going to pass you over to David now, who will just go through some tips on having a secure website.
Okay, what do we mean by secure websites? Well, when you input the details of any web address, in the top left-hand corner of that web address, there will be a locked symbol, like a padlock. That would be displayed if that web page is secure. If that symbol is missing, or indeed if it has like an information I letter there, if the user hovers their cursor over that I, a message will be displayed to say that this site is not secure. Be careful entering any personal information. Now, that warning is typically displayed if you're using Firefox or Chrome, for instance. It's not absolutely mandatory for you to have a secure website, though. The rules in GDPR and the Data Protection Act really oblige you to have a secure website where you are storing personal data in your website. The two most common examples of personal data being stored on websites are a contact us form and where you're accepting payments online. Now, with the contact us form, typically you'll be asking potential inquirers to input their name, their telephone number, and their email address. So that's clearly personal data which will be stored on your server. Similarly, if you're accepting payments online, you'll be asking clients to input details of their debit or credit cards. And if that page was not secure, that would be an offence which, if you were to be hacked, would have to be reported to the Information Commissioner Office. One other point about having a secure website, there really isn't any reason not to have one. Now, Google's latest algorithm gives extra points, or they call it Google juice, if you do have a secure website, because really you're demonstrating that you are taking personal security seriously. So we recommend all of our clients have secure websites, although interestingly, when we carried out a survey earlier this year, under a third of all law firms in Leicestershire have a secure website. Moving on to Law Society records, it's extremely common to find that the Law Society records that the public can access about you actually match the information contained on your website. So do go and have a look at the Law Society records for your firm and check whether or not the details for the solicitors in your firm are up to date, whether all office locations are accurate and correct, and whether or not the services listed on the Law Society entry about your firm matches your website. We find that it is not accurate in most instances. I'm going to now hand over to Emma, who's going to take you through outcome 8.5 of the SRA Code of Conduct.
Okay, so outcome 8.5 is one of the key requirements of the Code of Conduct. This needs to be displayed on your letterhead, website, and emails. You need to show the words authorised and regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. Often we find that firms have similar wording to this, but the wording will not be accurate. So you need to make sure that you're displaying authorised and regulated. You will then need to either display the firm's registered name and number if it is an LLP or a company, or if the firm is a partnership or a recognised sole practice, the name under which it is licensed or authorised by the SRA, and the number allocated to it by the SRA. You may wish to include your SRA number, although technically for limited entities, this is not obligatory. Companies House also outlines some requirements for displaying on your business letters, emails, and website. Firms must list the company's registered number, its registered office address, where the company is registered, and the fact that it's a limited company, usually by spelling out the company's full name, including limited or LTD. You may wish to include directors' names on your website or a list of members in the case of an LLP. However, it is important that you list them all. There is no requirement to show directors' names or members' names. However, if you were to show these on the website, you would need to display all of the names, not just some of them. And a list of directors' or members' names are usually kept at the registered office address, and it is standard practice to refer to this. I'm going to pass you over to David, who's going to talk to you about the EU online dispute resolution.
Now, I would say we've included this for the sake of completeness. However, I would have to concede that this is probably the least important of all of the requirements we're covering in this webinar. It seems we're on the verge of Brexit, So whether or not the EU Online Dispute Resolution Service will apply to the UK is highly questionable. I would doubt it. But we have to cover what are the current requirements. So according to the EU, the government and the Law Society, firms have to comply with this regulation if it sends client engagement letters or other contractual information by email. Now, we have produced a lot of guidance in relation to this area. Our compliance bulletin of February of 2016, when this was implemented, covers that. But we have replicated on this slide a sample paragraph, which we've recommended to our clients to essentially just copy and paste into either their client care letter or a terms of business document. Moving on to privacy policies. So to comply with GDPR and the Data Protection Act, a privacy policy must be contained on your website, as well as being present in client care letters or terms of business. We recommend that a detailed privacy policy is contained on your website and a slightly less detailed privacy policy on the client care letter. Client care letters can occasionally be criticized if they're too lengthy. That's why we prefer to have a condensed version in the client care letter and have the full version on the website. For template wording, which you may use, please see our previous briefings, or indeed just contact us and we'll send you a copy. Okay, moving over to Emma about pricing transparency.
Okay, so this was the most widely publicised element of the new regulations, which was covered in our previous webinar. So for firms that are providing certain services to members of the public, i.e. residential conveyancing, probate, motoring offences, employment tribunals and immigration, services for business were debt recovery, employment tribunals, licensing applications for business premises, firms need to ensure they are displaying their relevant pricing transparency. And according to Legal Futures, a couple of days after the regulations came in, only 28% of the firm's websites that they checked had complied with the price transparency rules. So really just to stress the importance of complying with the new rules. The SRA have produced a number of templates which you are free to use as a basis of your wording. The templates are actually very good. So DG Legal have decided not to produce our own set of templates. You can use the SRA templates if you wish to do so. Not only are you expected to include clear details on the pricing, but you also need to include what work is included in the price and who will be delivering the work. Much of the focus has been on the price element and the launch of the new SRA digital badge. However, very little attention has been directed to the third area of the new regulations, which is the rule obliging firms to publicise their complaints procedure on their website. Many will be unaware that in addition to explaining how to contact the legal ombudsman, complaint procedures must explain in what circumstances clients may complain to the SRA. The SRA is expecting firms to explain that clients can approach the SRA where there is a concern about the firm's behaviour. This slide gives you some sample wording which we have written, which you're free to use on your website. Oddly, you're not actually required to put this wording in your terms of business or your client care letters, but this needs to be displayed on your website. I'm going to pass you over to David, who will conclude this webinar.
Thank you, Emma. So just to sum up then, pricing transparency isn't only about publishing prices on your website. You have to also cover what is included for the price who's going to be dealing with the work, the right that clients have to complain directly to the SRA about a firm's behaviour, and there are a number of other website regulations which we've covered during this webinar. If you have any questions, please send those questions to teamadmin@dglegal.co.uk, and I'll make sure that those questions are answered by the end of this week. If you don't already do so, please do subscribe to legalvoice.co.uk. Legal Voice is our pro bono project, which will shortly be a charity, and its purpose in life is to spread news and information about access to justice and legal aid. And subscribers get a weekly email on a Friday, and your emails addresses are not used for any other purpose, as you would expect. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to you joining us for our next webinar. Thank you for your time, and goodbye.